one simple answer to your question is, this is the cost of democracy. You can't use the cost of democracy to say that we abandon democracy. And we have a decisive leader who will take a decisive decision.
Hi, I'm Shoma Chaudhury. Thanks for watching ENQUIRY. As India struggles to overcome the pandemic, there's an intense and angry argument brewing over the Central Vista, which is a contentious and expensive project by the Modi government to redesign the symbolic heart of Indian democracy with a new parliament, a new secretariat, the Prime Minister's house, and Vice President's enclave. The government says this is going to be a monument to New India. Its critics, on the other hand, say that this is a misplaced vanity project which will cost more than 20,000 crores and is sabotaging the heart of Indian democracy. To understand what is really at stake, I have a very respected conservation architect, urban planner, and the Delhi convener of INTAC, AGK Menon. Thank you very much for joining me on the show, Mr. Menon.
Thank you.
So I wanted to dive straight into the big controversy around the Central Vista. Mostly the political opposition to it is being articulated as the timing, that in the midst of a pandemic, and also the cost of the project, that it can be used for welfare, for hospitals, etc. So the priority. Is that the heart of your opposition to the Central Vista as well?
Not really, because that's the recent opposition. The opposition started long ago. Long ago means exactly when the project was announced. That's in November 2019. It was a complete surprise. One of the surprises was that such a major redevelopment project in the heart of the city, people didn't know about it. It was not in the public domain. The first time the public even got to know about the project was when a tender announcement was made for inviting architects to bid for the project. That was amazing. And for everything, it's shall we say, complete breaking of traditions and all was enough for generating opposition. A public project is not done in such opacity. We are a democracy. It's the heart of our capital. It is not a private building. It's not my house that I'm building. And so much money. So it started generating opposition right from then. Second, once one read the brief, one began to question it. Who articulated the brief that was being addressed through this project? It mentioned several issues that were completely contentious.
Such as?
Let's begin off with the parliament. It said a new parliament is required. Yes, two reasons were given. One, that this parliament was old and it was dangerous and it was inadequate. And second, that with the delimitations, a new parliament might be, more space would be required, which is not possible here. Completely fair. I think that's a perfectly fair assessment for a government to take, because they have to see the future and see what to do. But our response there is that comes in two ways. One, as people interested in heritage and conservation, you don't discard the baby with the bathwater. This is where our democracy was nurtured. This is where we functioned. So you don't have a reason to abandon it and say, okay, we'll build a new parliament. So that is one. Where was the sentiment? Where was our respect for the fact that this is a historical space? So once that attitude is taken, other strategies emerge. How can we make this building repurpose itself to our new needs? Safety, no problem, because it can. That's what conservation architects are for. They're supposed to be upgrading buildings. And in fact, someone like me, as part of INTAC, we're doing exactly that to Rashtrapati Bhavan. It's built at the same time. It has the same, structural problems, this or you name it, all those things. And it is functioning today as the residence of the head of the government. And it's being refurbished and it is being safe. We don't want the head of our government to have a roof collapse on his head. So certainly that's not the strategy that we abandon the building and say, okay, we'll build a new building. So as far as that is concerned, the air conditioning can be redone, and air conditioning in Rashtrapati Bhavan also, huge amount of works have to be done there, but it can be done here also. Second, a question about space, not adequate space, a more serious problem. For that, we are saying that if you take sentiment into account, other strategies emerge. Let's take the example of Westminster in London, facing exactly the same problems. They're refurbishing it because it's an old 150-year-old building, they're refurbishing it. And they're running short of space. As they say, our MPs are standing while we're conducting business. So it was debated for over 10 years what to do. And the solution that came up was very interesting. They said that, look, this building is far too important for us memory-wise, we'll keep it. It'll still function as a House of Commons. But the House of Lords will be built in York. Killing two birds with one stone. One, they're creating more space. Two, they're making the north of England more inclusive. It's not as though the government has to only function from Delhi. So we said that many such solutions are possible if the thing was debated.
Yeah.
Now we know, for example, it was told that, oh, the Vastu and this is wrong and that is wrong. Come on. The point is, Vastu is, I'm an architect. I deal with it in a very sort of routine way. Vastu is something that is, in our minds, very important. But several solutions can be found. For example, even now, people are saying the triangular building is bad for Vastu. So where do you go from there? You'll always find another Vastu problem to resolve. So this elaborate exercise is taking place, and we're building a triangular parliament building, and the Vastu experts are saying, wrong. It's the wrong thing to do. We can't have a government functioning in a triangular building.
So I want to just go step by step, because there are going to be so many issues. Let's take this whole issue about how do you repurpose old structures? Even before that, let's come to the fundamental issue, which is of debate and consensus building around something which is such a public undertaking, right? Which really deals with the national symbolism of the country. So let me take up the issue that you said, which is that in England, it took 10 years. There might be a counter argument to you that, we've laid too much store by things, even with the farm laws, there was a lot of anger from the government that, we've been debating this for 20, 30 years and it's about time someone did something. And a lot of Mr. Modi's cachet is that, oh, he's a bold, decisive leader, and why should everything take 10 years to discuss? So if you set aside the long time involved in discussing it, what would have been the correct process? For instance, the design,
Okay, I'll tell you what.
The jury, or how do you create, there'll always be disagreement. So what would have been the ideal process?
Let me clarify. One simple answer to your question is, this is the cost of democracy. You can't use the cost of democracy to say that we abandon democracy. And we have a decisive leader who will take a decisive decision and abandon democracy. So I'm sorry, that's a straightforward answer to that. But the question you're asking is more important, which is, what would we have done? Now, what we have done, I'd like to point out what is normally done. This is what we call a heritage precinct. A heritage precinct all over the world are redeveloped. How do they redevelop it? One or two protocols are required. One, you first try and establish what is the need for redevelopment. And that is discussed, and we establish fact, yes, we need to redevelop it. And that's absolutely correct. It's a 90-year-old place, the trees are dying, the infrastructure is in shambles. It can be a step, but it still has to be done systematically. It's just not that, oh, it is old, so we'll do it again. The protocol requires that in a heritage precinct, the first step is to find out what is the status, what's the state of the heritage. So that is a detailed technical study that was not undertaken. It is not just a greenfield project, an empty site. Where an empty site, you say, okay, now we want some new office buildings, we want a museum, we want a lawn, it's not that at all. It's not invention of a new area. It is the redevelopment of not any area, redevelopment of a heritage precinct. Not any heritage precinct, but the heart of the capital of Indian democracy. So my God, the amount of violations here are staggering. So when I said that, the objection started from the day one, these are the kind of concerns we had because we are conservation architects. We deal with this on a day-to-day basis. In fact, as we try, as Indians try and say we are modernizing, we are modern, and we sit on the high table of the rest of the world, we are at 5 trillion economy, etc. Similarly, we are a mature democracy. We are a mature governance system. Where is the mature governance system? A mature governance system, if you want to sit on the high table with the others, you got to have a protocol and process. And I don't buy that argument that, a decisive thing is required. No. My grandfather is going to get operated. I'm in a great hurry. So the doctor doesn't just cut him up and say, okay, now let's replace the heart. It's my grandfather. I've got sentiments. It's my relative. I want something much more considered. So it's that analogy, you can't just deal with it in that cavalier fashion which has been done now. We'll appoint an architect. The architect will decide what to do. My God, completely wrong.
Like you said, that whole process of democracy is extremely important. Transparency, participation, opposition, and then you arrive at some sort of, even if it's an uneasy consensus, but consensus.
Uneasy, correct.
But so, this brings me to the second question, which is about the design, and I'm coming to the scale and the rest of the project later. Let's just go with the Parliament building right now. That let's assume that even if after discussion, the intention of the government is, which it appears from their current, the way they've articulated the Central Vista, is to concentrate power and to create efficiencies and etc. So suppose they wanted to house the parliament, the expansion of the parliament in that area. Two questions. One is that could the parliament building itself have been extended? In the ways in New York, you have many old buildings which are sitting with modern structures. So is there a way of having done that? And that brings us to the design question, that in a democracy, how do you decide who will design such a crucial new symbol of democracy? The parliament is, as you're saying again and again, the heart of our democracy. So how did that process happen? How did Bimal Patel get chosen? And what would be the correct way for a design, who gets to design this?
Shoma, I'm sorry, you're asking me a question, eliding a lot of requirements. You assumed a lot of requirements and then asked me a question. So I don't know where to begin because I don't accept the questions in the first place. Means you posed a question based on completely contentious rationale. So I don't see why I should answer the question on those contentious rationale. I agreed to the fact that Parliament required a detailed scrutiny for the reasons that the government is saying, which is the building is old and has problems and inadequate, etc., etc. And most importantly, the delimitation require much more space. I'm agreeing to those requirements because the government is the right person to make the decision, not I. I don't know what the government needs. I don't know what the thing is. So I will not say you don't need it or whatever. I don't. I accept the fact. As far as the building is old, I'm saying yes, as a conservation architect, I know the answers. The second problem is more serious. How do I add more space? There's several strategies. As you quite rightly point out, around the world, many strategies are possible. Someone adds a brand new buildings to an old building. Someone adds a very mimicking architecture to the old building. Many strategies are possible. So if strategies are possible, what best to do? I'm not the person. I'm not the dictator. I can give you opinions, surely. I'm knowledgeable. I can give you opinions, but I resist doing that because that's exactly what I'm resisting, asking the government to resist from doing. So why should I give instant answers?
No, my question to you was the process. So, we've come to the, my question was that you said one is the goal, what is the need to do this? Yes. That itself, now, if you've identified that, the next issue is also over the design. Who gets to do that design? I'm asking that what is the process by which in a democracy, one arrives at who gets to design such a crucial building for democracy, So that's the question I was asking. What would have been the process?
Small clarification there. It's not the only building is designing, it's the entire stretch.
Yeah.
So so you have a certain process for selection of an architect for a building. You have a process for selecting an architect for an area where several buildings will be designed. Here, what has happened is it's gone backwards. An architect has been selected and the architect has been asked to say, what is the problem? It's completely wrong. You don't find the solution, ask the solution, tell us what the problem was. See, that's what has happened now. And that is what we're objecting to. Bimal Patel is a good friend of mine. I have no problem with him. He's a competent architect. I have no problem with that. All I'm saying, the selection process is completely wrong, opaque, and maybe even contentious. Because there are rumors about, he was the architect who would have been selected in the first place. I'm not getting into that. I'm not accusing the government of that. But there were such perceptions.
No, that's again, Mr. Menon, just to pin you down on my, just to get clarity on my question, was that elsewhere in the world, or even in India prior to this, what is the process by which an architect gets picked? So what I wanted to ask you is that, is it the government's prerogative, or should there have been a design jury, comprised of several experts in the field? What would have been seen to be a transparent process for the aesthetic of it?
Okay, now I'd again like to separate two things. One is who decides and what the process is. So let's not mix up the two. Obviously, the government decides. It's an elected government. We've elected them to take decisions. So the government decides the final say. But how does the government decide on what? Even today, the Prime Minister has given 2 or 3 alternatives and he selects from those 2 or 3 alternatives. He doesn't select those 2 or 3 alternatives and say, okay, I choose this one. A committee, a technical committee decides, interviews and says that, okay, here are the 3 best people. And then the Prime Minister decides who he would like. Fair enough. I'm saying that is the decision-making process. Here too, it could have been done. An architect can be selected, as I said, for 2 reasons, from 2 processes. One, the brief would have been developed. We would have first decided what is the brief. Like what I said, should a new building be designed only for the Rajya Sabha, only for this, for both? That had to be debated and discussed. Then what happens to the old building? What happens to a sentiment? My God, I can't write it off. I can't answer your question by writing it off, that I've already settled the fact that this is my heart of my democracy and I've given it up. And now I decide who the architect for this new building is going to be. You already asked me to sacrifice my mother. And now you're saying who should be my new mother? I'm sorry, I can't answer that question, who my new mother should be. Why should I abandon my old mother? So there is that, I think first, it has to be decided what should be done. For that, a brief has to be made. A brief, who makes it? Obviously the experts, maybe the parliamentarians should have gone to the select committee, whatever it is, and they should decide, well, what is it that we want to do? How much space do we need? Do we need 500 seats, 800 seats, 1,000 seats? What do we want? A brief has to be made. And they make the brief. And how many committees do you want, etc. Once that is done, 2 things are possible. One, the government could say, okay, we have competent architects, we'll select one. Dangerous, but it is their prerogative. They can say that, you got the brief, now we know that Mr. X is the best architect, we'll award the work to him. As I said, not very satisfactory, but yet if it is transparent, they'll say, well, obviously the government has chosen a very well-known architect. Let's take a few years back, suppose the government will say, we want Charles Correa to do this building. Very few people would have objected to it because, Charles Correa is a well-known figure, and even though he was selected, people may say that's wrong way of selecting, but little less debate. Second, they could have said, okay, here's the brief, let's have a competition. 2 types of competition. One, a competition amongst very select number of people. Second, a competition amongst open competition. Even the young, inexperienced person can compete, which, for example, is what happened in the Beaubourg, the Pompidou Center in Paris. It was an open competition. An amazing building came up because some unknown people came up with some crazy idea and a wonderful building emerged. That possibility is there. Or the other buildings, even if I were to take Paris as an example, many major buildings have been worked out. They had competitions, small competition, big competition, and a person was selected. This competition is necessary in a democracy because we must completely wipe out any perception of favoritism. That is a democratic problem. In a democracy, we always question decisions.
Right.
And so to override that, we got to have a competition.
So now let me bring you back to the bigger issues at stake, which is that the parliament is one aspect of it, and we could keep discussing that. But there's also a re-envisioning of the entire Central Vista space, you know, the entire Rajpath Avenue, all the other buildings, the Prime Minister's house, the Vice President's house, the secretariat, all of that. So what are your, you know, I know that you've been at the forefront of a lot of opposition of this. Can you spell out now what your problem is with the entire Vista, the entire vision for the Vista altogether?
Okay, as I told you a bit earlier, here is a problem, a solution in search of a problem. That's the process we have followed. We've selected this architect. We're now telling the architect, tell us what the problem is. Amazing, reversal of processes. He is supposed to tell us what is wrong with Central Vista, what has to be done, what are the buildings that have to go, what are the buildings that have to stay, etc., etc. It just boggles imagination, and I can only attribute it to two things: one, absolute megalomania, absolute insensitivity, or complete foolishness. I mean, I would not trust such a major project to an architect and say, okay, tell us what to do. Then we come to the brief. This architect says that there'll be 10 secretariat buildings. All the secretaries, the ministries will come here. Where did this thing come from? All of the world, they're trying to decentralize. Suddenly, our brilliant government says, we'll centralize. Why? Where does this idea come from? Where did the debate take place? That we'll have more efficiency if we centralize. Whereas we know, and I'm not a government expert, but I know from what I'm saying that all over the world, they're saying centralization is the problem of democracy. Let us decentralize. They're saying, oh, some office was in Dwarka, some was here, some was there. A lot of people think that's good. That's the way it should be. I mean, people should be able to, access it easily. Now what will happen? It will all be at one place. So let us take the worst case scenario. Some enemy of India wants to get rid of the government of India. My God, we're giving them a solution.
Such concentration, yeah.
Such concentration. So even from that point of view, we know very well that this is what the world is like. And we're saying we'll centralize it. Let's take some examples of centralization. 5 years ago, the Minister of External Affairs built a new building opposite the museum. It's going to be demolished. And they're going to come into one of those new buildings that the architect has designed. Why? It was a purpose. They're saying Udyog Bhavan is old. I have questions with that, but I can see the rationale. They're biased against old people like me and they want to get rid of me. Fine, okay. They don't like me. But I can say what's wrong with the Ministry of External Affairs. It's a new building. What's wrong with IGNCA? There's a competition, a world international competition that was held 20 years ago. And a design was selected. What's wrong with that? Buildings were built. Crores were spent on it. My money. Not the government's money, my money. The Ministry of External Affairs is my money. Crores were spent on a purpose-built building. It's going to be demolished. What makes this logic work, I don't understand. Where they're mixing up a few facts and a lot of fiction. A few facts being that, oh, you go to Shastri Bhavan, my God, what a terrible office. How can the government of India function here? True. The toilet stinks, the things are inefficient, all. But as it's again, using my earlier arguments, things can be refurbished. And let's take this argument that Udyog Bhavan and Shastri Bhavan and all that are old buildings. But what is heritage, I ask you? Is heritage something that was built 100 years ago? Or is heritage a memory of our architectural process? In 1947, when India got independent, it had to build some secretariat buildings. It had some architects to build these buildings. Inadequate today in 2021. Still my memory, still my process. It still established the fact that this is the way we've learnt our lessons. So I'm not saying that I got to live with that. I can refurbish it, but memory is still an important heritage element. I'm pointing this out to you because in this all argument, we always think of heritage as a physical structure. Something was built 100 years ago, it is heritage. I'm contesting that. I'm contesting by saying no. Heritage is not only structure, it is memory. Like I try to argue that Parliament, the fact that this is the home of my Parliament has to be valued. This is the heart of my democracy, has to be valued. Our legacy is just not buildings. So Shastri, the Udyog Bhavan is just not a building. It is the state of architecture in 1950. I, as an architect, want to retain some of that memory to say, well, that's the distance I've traveled. In 1950, I should do this.
So, though I have a lot of issues with the Central Vista as well, but, I want clarity to come out of this conversation. So I want to play some of the government's positions back to you. So I'll come to the pragmatic issues. This issue, that the heart of the matter, there are two hearts of the matter as far as I see. One is what you're saying, which is about continuity with the past and how do you evolve while keeping one foot in continuity and in your history. The second for me is, what is the symbolism? The beauty of Rajpath, even though it was a colonial structure, is that there was access of people and power sitting next to each other. All those open Maidans, people could access.
Character statement. I cannot accept your statement because you say, even though it was a colonial structure, because it was a colonial structure, I say. Because what is our heritage? Our heritage is the good and the bad. But you already elided that by saying, oh, because it was a colonial structure, we can get rid of it as though it has got, it's not my heritage. It is my heritage. That is why it should be protected. Not because it should be demolished because it was a colonial, but because it should be protected because it is my history. So right. I see how even someone like you who's so sensitive to it is so easily swayed by the fact that we can get rid of some part of history, others we must protect.
No, I wasn't going to say that at all. As I told you, I was trying to take on, the government's position so that you can help clarify that. So this is not my position. I certainly believe in the palimpsest idea of history, which is that it's a layer upon layer of layer. But the question I was posing was two. One was that if there are those who argue that an elected government has the right to break from the past, are there examples where you break from your past? Is there any case to be made on that? And I wanted you to take on that because Mr. Modi, in his when he laid the foundation stone, he said that was our history, that's where our necessities were. Now this is a new India and it's our modern vision. So I want you to take on that, intellectually, that why should someone not have the right to break from your past? And the second question I was articulating was that the beauty of this for me was that while this was the heart of power, people had much access to that in the Maidans, so symbolically it represented democracy, that next to your North Block, South Block and your parliament, there were people spilling over in the lawns, there was families there, so that idea of people and power contiguously sitting was very powerful. So
Shoma, you put me in a difficulty. You're conflating so many issues. I don't know how to separate them without contradicting you. I don't want to contradict you because you're saying right things, but you're conflating them.
Okay.
You're conflating the fact that, it was people milling around and it is history and all that. Yes, absolutely right. That would be a point I would be making much later because that was one of the consequences of this design. That by making it a secure government enclave, you're going to eliminate the fact that we can't loiter here anymore. It is not my public space. Public space is a Maidan where I can, hawa khana, I can do what I want. Now you cannot, because this is where my government is. By God, I may be a Pakistani agent. I may have evil designs on this place. So I'll be kept out. There'll be CCTV cameras. There'll be barbed wires. So this is a problem.
Yeah.
So if you're saying
I said, for me, it really matters that if you concentrate power the way the Central Vista is now imagining it, you're going to eat at the very heart of the symbolism that people could access that area. It'll become a high security zone,
Absolutely. That is the ultimate consequence of it. Firstly, what was the necessity of concentrating it? What's the management decision? What was the social decision? What was the efficiency decision? They're experts. Management experts told us. Is our government of India going to function better because it is centralized? The little I know about management, the what I know, the mantra is decentralize. Today, in the complexity of the world, in the way the digital economy, digital technology increasing and all that, in fact, because of the pandemic, I'm working from home. What was the need for me to go to an office? I mean, these are being questioned today. So now the government of India is saying that we'll spend 20,000 crores to do exactly the opposite. What is the rationale? It starts step by step by step by step. The end results because of the earlier decisions. We got to have a regimented place. Now that you have not asked me the design questions yet.
I'm going to come to that. I wanted to play back to you some of what the government has been saying. In fact, just before you came on, I was in conversation. I've been trying to convince the government to come and have a dialogue with architects like you. And, so two things they said. One, publicly, they've been saying that they were spending 1,000 crore on renting buildings, and the money that's being spent on this project will be made up by absolving the rent that the government was paying. And the second is this question that you've already started to address, which is the question of efficiency. They have been arguing that it's too scattered, it's difficult to coordinate, there's a lot of traffic, there's pollution, a lot of petrol being used. If you concentrate this and there's a transport system with 70,000 members of government are all using, that it is going to become more energy efficient. So how would you take them on that?
You see, you cannot run with the hares and hunt with the hounds. This argument can be used both ways. They're using it one way, but I'm saying, as I said, you can't run with the hares and hunt with the hounds. This first question, 1,000 crores are being spent on rental. Is that a waste of money? Or is it boosting the economy? Because exactly what the government is telling me now, that this 20,000 rupees is required because we've got to boost up the economy. So we're doing all this wasteful thing so the economy boosts. I'm saying I was already boosting my economy. I was spending 1,000 crores on rent.
Yeah, you were spreading it around. Yeah.
You're spreading it around. So I'm saying you cannot, this government very conveniently uses the arguments they may want. They are, again, repeating, running with the hares, hunting with the hounds. We know that that's a specious argument. This 1,000 crores is being repeated ad nauseum. So, sure, let's get rid of that. It's not a justification. It's not a rationale.
Yeah.
What's the second thing the government is saying?
Second, that they're saying is this whole business about efficiency, that it's difficult to coordinate, but you've been answering that very strongly, and I agree with it.
Yes. So I'm saying I'm quite efficient.
And in a government that wants digitization, why do you need physical proximity for efficiency?
Absolutely. As I said, my God, these people are so clever at running with the hares and hunting with the hounds. They'll use the argument anyway, in a which way they want. Why should I fall into that trap? I use my mind. It's my valuable money, my nation, my heritage. And you're saying the government doesn't want to talk? Of course they don't want to talk. From 2019, we've been telling them, look, please, can we dialogue with you? Because I represent INTAC. And we said, look, this area was some area that we nominated as World Heritage. And you withdrew that nomination. So we know this area quite well. And we understand your imperative that it has to be upgraded. So it is not as though we are saying that, it should be sort of put in aspic and frozen. Not at all. Heritage is not freezing things as they were. Heritage is that we must develop, it must grow, we need to serve today's needs. Not a response to that. We gave written responses, not a response to that. This is we'll have meetings. What's the meeting? We called for a meeting with 100 people, a PowerPoint presentation is made, and end of the story. We have made you aware of it. Where is the dialogue? I've attended 2 such things. I'm saying, my God, it's foolish. Where is the dialogue? In all honesty, I am a patriot. I'm with the government. I have an elected government. I'm for the elected government. I'm saying I want to help you. I'm not against you. They don't want help. They know exactly what they want to do. And I've experienced this. I'm telling this on camera that this is the situation. That they don't want my opinion or mine. Forget it. I'm nobody. But people like other experts, they don't want it. This is not a government that wants experts to advise them. And we know from the pandemic that this is exactly what's happened.
So, as I said, the person I was talking with who was trying to convince that they should join in this dialogue said, how do you call Shastri Bhavan, etc., heritage? These are just socialist era ugly buildings. How does this fall as heritage? How can you call this heritage? So what would be your response? Now this comes back to what I was asking you earlier, in this battle of aesthetic and what counts as heritage.
What is there? What is heritage? What is to be preserved? What is not to be preserved? Yes, it comes to all that. And as I told you earlier also, that you can't just dismiss it because the socialist era buildings should be removed. The socialist era was also, 50 years of my history. I don't remove it, but that doesn't mean I suffer it. I will upgrade it. I'll do whatever, a lot of other things with it. For example, I'll tell you, when the Berlin Wall was broken and became East and West became the same, Germany had a lot of socialist era buildings to deal with. And of course, it was a new regime. What did they do? They demolished it? Not at all. They refurbished it.
Or repurposed it? Is there...
Repurposed, of course. But even West Germany did not get rid of East German, shall we say, fascist architecture or socialist architecture, whatever you want to, whatever derogatory term you want to use. Oh, it's not earthquake-proof. It can be made earthquake-proof. I have experts. I got to Bimal Patel and said, look, Mr. Bimal Patel, you're a friend, let us discuss it. Did he discuss it? No. He gave me a PowerPoint presentation. So where is the dialogue?
When you talk about the precinct, I'm trying to create clarity for those who don't entirely understand what's at stake. Will you disaggregate what are absolutely no-go areas and what are areas where one can, compromise or evolve? For instance, say they built a brand new headquarters for the CBI. So when we're talking about these socialist era buildings, let's assume they're ugly, let's assume they smell, let's assume they're not well ventilated, whatever is wrong with them, I don't know. Let's assume there's something wrong with them aesthetically. Could they be repurposed, as you said, modernized and maybe turned into museums, but that they still disaggregate the ministries in other areas? So our primary opposition is the concentration of all government into one area. That's a primary opposition. The process you've talked about. But would you disaggregate any of this project and say, okay, if you want to relocate ministries, relocate them in newer buildings, more airy, more eco-friendly, all of that. But there's some areas which are absolutely, like you said, global heritage site, and you can't play with the intention of that area. Would you be able to separate the project in those ways?
Of course it can. That is my job. I'm a conservation architect. I'm not a person who puts things into a museum. A museologist puts things into a museum. A conservation architect answers your question, which is, how do I repurpose buildings and retain my heritage? That is my job. And you dismiss it saying that, no, but that you ask me, I will give you answers. So you can't ask me a question and, what is truth suggesting pilot and would not wait for an answer. This is exactly what the government is doing. They are posing the question, but not waiting for an answer. They've already decided the answer. Shastri Bhavan has to go, so it has to go. I will even be cautious enough to say maybe it has to go. But how it has to go, when it has to go, I said there is a process to decide that. It is not Mr. Menon who decides. It is not Mr. A or Mr. B or Mr. C who decides. It is a process that decides this. I'm arguing so passionately here because it is heritage. It is grade 1 heritage. It is not only grade 1 heritage, it's the heart of the democracy of India. Could it go any higher than that? And then you ask me to compromise on process? I'm sorry, I just cannot accept it. It is not Mr. Bimal Patel's job. It is not Mr. Modi's job. It is not Mr. Hardeep Puri's job. It is not the CPWD's job. I'm sorry, I use these names purposefully. It is not Hardeep Puri's heritage. It is not Modi's heritage. It is not CPWD's heritage. It is the country's heritage. And there's a way to deal with the country's heritage. And the results we're getting is a disaster.
I know you're going to say that I'm dragging you in deeper into an argument where you don't even want to argue, so I get that. But because we're already into the process, it's been sanctioned by the Supreme Court, the parliament has, because they have a majority. So in terms, in some ways, this project is just going to continue unless one really understands what's at stake. So let me pull you a little bit in. Assuming now that this is a fait accompli, that these buildings are going to be built on Rajpath, it's already being dug up. I think there are many problematic issues, like it's already said no photography allowed. Already your right to even oversee what is happening as a citizen to the heart of your democracy is being denied. So I have huge problems with the loss of democracy that is being signaled here. But let's assume those buildings come up. I come back to that issue of, I'm finding it hard to put this question because I know you're going to get irritated that I'm almost pulling you into a fait accompli. Can you further disaggregate what is problematic about all these buildings coming up on Rajpath?
Okay. Now let me answer the question very simply. One, you asked me to take a black and white situation. I'm saying, no, I will not. And you agreed also that I may not take it. Okay, I will not. Then what do? I'll say, you'll drag me kicking and screaming into the next stage. So allow me to kick and scream. What would I do now? I will now say, which is being argued now, why should the National Museum go? It is much too important. It's got these artifacts are going to get lost. They're going to be broken. They're going to see the next stage. As you said, given that the project is going to go through, you'll drag me kicking and screaming into accepting whatever it is. I'm kicking and screaming.
Yeah, I'm saying, why should that? A lot of people are feeling that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm saying, why should the National Museum be demolished? What's wrong with that? Oh, it is inadequate. That's. See, I've got hundreds of museums around the world that are being refurbished. Do that here also. There's space. You've demolished so many buildings. You've demolished Vigyan Bhavan and all that. You've got so much space now. So please, take advantage of it, etc. I'm just saying that can be done. IGNCA. Why should it be done? For example, you said the people are going to be removed. Why can't the cultural center, that is when Latins designed it, not this Rajpath and Janpath crossing, was supposed to be the cultural hub. Why can't it remain the cultural hub? Why can't the museum remain there so people can still come and access it and still access the Central Vista? Why can't IGNC be there? Cultural center be there? Theaters can come up there, various other centers can come up there. So that again, people have reason to go there and use it. And then archives building will remain because that is a heritage building. Annex is going. And people are extremely worried. These are fragile archives. How will it be done? So maybe if it has to be done, can we have an oversight to make sure that in my mind, that my thing is not going to get lost. It's not going to get destroyed. I know, for example, from history, what happened in Cairo, what happened in other war areas. They have a war and suddenly artifacts are lost and suddenly it comes into the black market. Is that the fate of my legacy? A lot of things have not been inventorized yet. We're moving it. If in the meantime some things get lost, who's the wiser? I know who the gainer is. So I'm saying, you drag me kicking and screaming. Can I at least save the National Museum? Can I at least save the IGNCA? Can I at least save the archives? I may not stop the parliament being building is being constructed in front of me. But, can we then still discuss how to preserve the heart of democracy being remaining the heart of democracy? There is talk that maybe they'll have special sessions there. There is talk that maybe the Lok Sabha can be expanded and still operate from that place. And the new building. All these are arguments. See, these things should have been argued 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think the heart of what you're saying is that all of us, we the people, are cut out of the conversation. And that is really the heart of why we're a democracy. So decisiveness can be the next step that you get things done. But the fact that you get things done even without dialogue is actually being problematic right through. So
let me say something which I don't know whether you want to show or not. But one of the first articles I wrote, maybe February, after the June, July, August, December, in February itself I wrote. I could see the thing. I said, look, this is not a redevelopment project. This is politics by other means. You and I could argue about redevelopment, pretty, not pretty, do this, not do this, do. No, it is not. We're talking about politics. You and I are out of it. It's a majority government. They're in control. And if you give me an opportunity to talk to you, I'll only use this as an excuse. I'm only talking as a Democrat. I'm not against the government. Please don't put me in jail. Don't accuse me of sedition. I'm not being seditious at all. But the project as it is being run, opaque, solution first, problem next, is politics.
So I'm going to take you on some more of the granular stuff, because the government is now talking in a more granular way, which is about the tenders, So everyone's saying, well, it's very prestigious companies that have got the tender. It was a global tender. The Tatas have got it and Shapoorji's got it. So again, I know that's deep into a process where the very heart, the seed of the process is what, one has a problem with. But do you feel that at least the financial tendering on it was transparent, or are there issues even with that?
See, I will give the benefit of doubt to the government because the CPWD is overseeing it. And CPWD has a very rigorous process. I know it. They have a very rigorous process of tendering and etc., etc. So if the CPWD is being allowed to do their work, I will give the benefit of doubt to the government that the best is being selected, the best person is being selected for the construction. They have a very rigorous process. So I would give them the benefit of the doubt. Not that things can't go wrong. They may certainly be able to go wrong. But at some point, you can't accuse me of being a naysayer all the time. I would say, okay, something's all right. It's being handled by a very professional agency, which is the CPWD.
So that brings me to the other question, which again seems very, very disturbing, is that when you change the skyline of a city, so correct me if I'm wrong, I'm told that these are going to be 50% higher than what the Vista plan allows. So are these buildings now going to dwarf some of the heritage buildings? I'm also told that the floor area is 50% more than what is supposed to be in that area. So the green space, out of the 85 acres now being developed, just 15 acres is going to be left for access to people and green areas. So tell me about, just at that level, what is wrong with the way they're even conceiving the design and the skyline?
You see, it's like this. You're asking questions which require some technical knowledge and answers. I will try and simplify it by saying one or two things. One, this development project has been permitted because they violated the master plan. The master plan said that no new office in Central Delhi should be all decentralized. The master plan said that. Now the very same master plan is being modified to say it will be centralized. It will be allowed 50% more area. So I'm saying that, yes, I'm object to it, because why did we have a master plan in the first place? If at the whim of a powerful government, we can change the master plan, why did I spend time making a master plan? When the master plan said that this area is a cultural center, and you change the master plan to the land use to say it's going to be an office building, why did I have a master plan? So you are asking questions which get into the heart of the problem, which is we have a system of governance, which is governed with a system. We are breaking the system. We are violating the system. And you're saying, now what do you think about it? They violated the master plan. They've modified it. So are they going by the rule of law or rule by law? They're going by rule by law because they changed the law. I'll give you another technical thing, maybe you understand. For efficiency in travel, they're saying they're going to have a metro line underneath. They're going to have all this. For that, a huge change in the master plan had to be done, which is the master plan very clearly stated that in heritage area, it cannot be a transport-oriented development, TOD. In TOD areas, you allowed 50% more floor area ratio, allowed metro lines and all that. But the master plan very clearly said that it shall not happen in a heritage area. Why? Because heritage will change if you allowed 50% more and all that. Now they're saying that because they've created a problem, they're going to find a solution, which is they're going to have a metro there. And because they got a metro there, they can go higher, which is they'll put more people there. So I'm just saying, where do I begin to unravel the mess that we are creating for ourselves? Buildings are going up. They are going up. And if I argue, they'll say it is as per law. It's as per the law that they've changed.
So let me ask you a detail there. Is there any provision where a master plan is allowed to change and evolve? So I read somewhere that this was actually the next phase of a master plan was between 2011 and 2021. And so changes can come into a master plan.
in answer to your question, in a democracy, nothing is frozen. Things change, you change. Even the constitution changes. We've got, my God, over 100 amendments to our constitution. So what's to say our constitution is written in stone? It is not written in stone. As things change, you change. But there's a process of doing it. So answer your question, can master plans change? Of course it can change. But there's a process of doing it. I'll give you one process. If the land use had to be changed, the process says that you got to do 2 or 3 things. One is you got to find out what is the consequence of that change. It's a heritage area. What's the impact? So you got to do a heritage impact assessment. You got to do an environment impact assessment for the change. Was it done? No, it was not done. Second, the master plan says that we had allocated so much density here, so much density, so much there. Now you're changing and make it much more dense. How are you going to compensate for it? Where's the compensation? You can't say that green area that was here is now being put next to the Yamuna River. They're absolutely right. They're increasing the green area. Where? Behind Rashtrapati Bhavan, which is already a green area. They're making an arboretum. And next to the Yamuna River, they're going to make a India celebratory park there. 100 acres there. Okay, increasing that, 100 acres. But, that's not you don't make a mockery of the master plan, they're making a mockery of it. So, answer to your question, yes, master plans can be changed because it foresees the fact there may be need for change.
I mean, the way it's been rushed through, I was seeing that the Solicitor General's argument now is that these particular projects should go through because we've created liability and the costs are going to go up. So you rush something through and then you say it's a fait accompli, so.
And in fact, a very wonderful argument was made in the High Court in the last case, which I don't know how the judgment is reserved. I don't know how they're going to answer that question, which was, if you say it is essential services, please define what was so essential about it. 2, if it is a service for whom? Is it service for the government of India or is it for the people who are dying? Is it essential? Was it more essential to build a hospital or was it more essential to build these secretariat buildings?
Well, I'm just going to play because we don't have someone from government. It would have been so good if one.
You'll never get them in front of us. You'll never get them in front of us. Yeah. They avoid it. As I said, they run with the hares, hunt with the hounds because exactly that. The hare is never.
In fact, I've been asking Mr. Bimal Patel for an interview as well, so that one can pose questions at least.
I've gone to Ahmedabad, CEPT University to debate with Bimal Patel on the scheme in March last year when this thing was being debated. I was invited. 2 hours. 1.5 hours, Mr. Bimal Patel makes a PowerPoint presentation. In half an hour, 3 people are supposed to answer. Is that a debate? Or is it like what you and I are having? Enough time for you to say what you want, enough time you're allowing me, enough time to say what I want. And with respect, we're listening to each other. With respect, we're answering each other. They don't want a debate.
So I was just going to play back some of what they're saying so that at least our viewers get clarity. So when this issue about money comes up, about how much money is being spent on this project, and right now it's still being said 20,000 crore, but actually with the PM's house, it's going to go up even more. And the costs go up all the time on projects. So we don't know where this will end up. But I've been seeing that the government's been putting out this counter argument that when you compare it as, this can be spent on health and it could have been spent on oxygen and pandemics and the vaccines, the response Mr. Hardeep Puri and others from government have been putting out is that the health budget has gone up to 2 lakh crore and that there have been more aims created in this government. It's gone from 6 to 22, that medical seats as undergraduate has gone from 30,000 to 50,000, postgraduate from 50,000 to 80,000, medical colleges from 350 to 850. So, they're putting out the counter argument that there's enough finance to do that and this. So what would be your response to that?
Very simple to answer that. My left hand is hurt. But my right hand is okay. Look how strong it is. Look how strong I am. But my left hand is hurt. I'm still one whole being. So you can't just use this argument that we are building so much hospitals and all that. The famous saying, Caesar's wife must be above suspicion. So here the government has failed drastically in giving us this confidence that they mean what they say. As I said, that it may indeed 20,000 crores for a country of 5 trillion economy may be nothing. We may indeed be able to offer it. But where is the sentiment? Where is the heart? Where is the perceptions?
Yeah, one fact remains that we did not order enough vaccines on time. We're not offering free.
Government must be above suspicion. It is our government. They cannot build a prime minister's palace and still saying they were building hospitals. There's no doubt of the fact that the prime minister is building a palace for himself when he's got already a palace in Racecourse Road.
So I wanted to come to the prime minister's house and the vice president's house, that we've argued that some of these old structures like the parliament building, etc., needed modernization and refurbishing. And, we've been through that. But what about 7 Racecourse Road? Does that need modernization? One always thought that it's a beautiful building with lavish acreage around it.
It's beautiful. It's well done, well appointed, very modern, latest security, latest everything. Everything is there. Like the Prime Minister requires. The Prime Minister's house is perfectly all right. Wonderful. And I'm just amazed how beautifully it has been done. They've got the best interior designers to do the interiors. The lawns are immaculate. Yet a new palace is required. And I shudder at some of our propensity as Indians. When a Prime Minister dies, it becomes a museum. What a waste. And that 10 Racecourse Road, crores and crores are spent precisely for this reason, that we want to stop this. That anytime a Prime Minister dies, it becomes a museum. So this is now going to be the permanent house for a Prime Minister. So we need this auditorium, we need this communication system, we need security system, we need this, we need all that is put in there. Now, what happened to those reasons? Secondly, let me also point out, when this project was shown for the first time in public, and second time, third time also, the Prime Minister's house was not there. The Vice President's house was not there. These have all come out subsequently, which leads me to another point that I was trying to say. These kind of designs are not done in the running. As you run along, you design. My God, this is my heart of my democracy. I don't design as I run. I design first and then run. We start a scheme, we don't know what the end is going to be. So when you quite rightly say we don't know it's going to be 20,000 crores, God knows what are the extravagant pipe dream they'll have. England also goes to the London and traffic is stopped. They don't change the Buckingham Palace so that the traffic in London is not stopped. Traffic stops here when a VIP moves on the avenue. Okay, it stops. We learn to live with it. I'm not going to spend 20,000 crores to allow me to take those 2 seconds extra to pass a road because the VIP is not moving. I don't think I want to do that. That's extravagant expense. So I don't buy all these arguments. I'm sorry.
So that brings me to the last of it. We touched on it earlier, but can you talk about what is just problematic at the level of symbolism of the new design, the new concentration that is coming up, as architecture also signals things. So can you spell out what you see as problematic with the symbolism of this?
Very simple symbol. We claim to be a democracy. We are acting like a banana republic. So the symbolism is just that we can do what we want, when we want, how we want. That is not democracy. To me, this project symbolizes that we abandon all pretense that we are a democracy. Physically, I will not argue it because there's a legal term that there's no disputing taste. What you like, I might not. What I like, you might not. So I will not argue on taste and aesthetics. Aesthetics, we can go on and on arguing. This is not an argument on aesthetics. It's an argument on who we are and who we claim to be as what, That's what the whole argument is about. And if we act ethically, our design will be ethical and beautiful. If we act in a government process that is, according to rule of law, it will be beautiful. This project is out and out bad symbolism for our democracy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Menon.
Welcome. All the best, and thank you for this opportunity to say what I want to say. Thank you.